I'm here to enlist you in helping reshape the story about how humans and other critters get things done. Here's the old story. We've already heard a little bit about it. Biology is war, in which only the fiercest survive. Businesses and nations succeed only by defeating, destroying, and dominating competition. Politics is about your side winning at all costs. But I think we can see the very beginnings of a new story beginning to emerge. It's a narrative spread across a number of different disciplines in which cooperation, collective action, and complex interdependencies play a more important role, and the central, but not all-important role of competition and survival of the fittest shrinks just a little bit to make room. I started thinking about the relationship between communication, media, and collective action when I wrote Smart Mobs, and I found that when I finished the book, I kept thinking about it. In fact, if you look back, human communication, media, and the ways in which we organize socially have been co-evolving for quite a long time. Humans have lived for much, much longer than the approximately 10,000 years of settled agricultural civilization in small family groups. Nomadic hunters bringing down rabbits, gathering food. The form of wealth in those days was enough food to stay alive. But at some point, they banded together to hunt bigger game. And we don't know exactly how they did this, although they must have solved some collective action problems. It only makes sense that you can't hunt mastodons while you're fighting with the other groups. And again, we have no way of knowing, but it's clear that a new form of wealth must have emerged. More protein than the hunter's family could eat before it rotted. So that raised a social question that I believe must have driven new social forms. Did the people who ate that mastodon meat owe something to the hunters and their families? And if so, how do they make arrangements? Again, we can't know, but we can be pretty sure that some form of symbolic communication must have been involved. Of course, with agriculture came the first big civilizations, the first cities built of mud and brick, the first empires. And it was the administrators of these empires who began hiring people to keep track of the wheat and sheep and wine that was owed and the taxes that was owed on them by making marks on clay in that time. And not too much longer after that, the alphabet was invented. And this powerful tool was really reserved for thousands of years for the elite administrators who kept track of accounts for the empires. And then another communication technology enabled new media. The printing press came along, and within decades, millions of people became literate. And from literate populations, new forms of collective action emerged in the spheres of knowledge, religion, and politics. We saw scientific revolutions, the Protestant Reformation, constitutional democracies possible where they had not been possible before. Not created by the printing press, but enabled by the collective action that emerges from literacy. And again, new forms of wealth emerged. Now, commerce is ancient. Markets are as old as the crossroads. But capitalism, as we know it, is only a few hundred years old, enabled by cooperative arrangements and technologies such as the joint stock ownership company, shared liability insurance, double entry bookkeeping. Now, of course, the enabling technologies are based on the internet. And in the many-to-many era, every desktop is now a printing press, a broadcasting station, a community, or a marketplace. Evolution is speeding up. More recently, that power is untethering and leaping off the desktops. And very, very quickly, we're going to see a significant portion, if not the majority of the human race, walking around, holding, carrying, or wearing supercomputers linked at speeds greater than what we consider to be broadband today. Now, when I started looking into collective action, the considerable literature on it is based on what sociologists call social dilemmas. And there are a couple of mythic narratives of social dilemmas. I'm going to talk briefly about two of them, the prisoner's dilemma and the tragedy of the commons. Now, when I talked about this with Kevin Kelly, he assured me that everybody in this audience pretty much knows the details of the prisoner's dilemma. So I'm just going to go over that very, very quickly. If you have more questions about it, ask Kevin Kelly later. The prisoner's dilemma is actually a story that's overlaid on a mathematical matrix that came out of the game theory that in the early years of thinking about nuclear war, two players who couldn't trust each other. Let me just say that every unsecured transaction is a good example of a prisoner's dilemma. Person with the goods, person with the money, because they can't trust each other, are not going to exchange. Neither one wants to be the first one, or they're going to get the sucker's payoff. But both lose, of course, because they don't get what they want. If they could only agree, if they could only turn a prisoner's dilemma into a different payoff matrix called an assurance game, they could proceed. 20 years ago, Robert Axelrod used the prisoner's dilemma as a probe of the biological question: if we're here because our ancestors were such fierce competitors, how does cooperation exist at all? He started a computer tournament for people to submit prisoner's dilemma strategies and discovered, much to his surprise, that a very, very simple strategy won. It won the first tournament, and even after everyone knew it won the second tournament. That's known as tit for tat. Another economic game that may not be as well known as the prisoner's dilemma is the ultimatum game. And it's also a very interesting probe of our assumptions about the way people make economic transactions. Here's how the game's played. There are two players. They've never played the game before. They will not play it again. They don't know each other, and they are, in fact, in separate rooms. First player is offered $100 and is asked to propose a split. 50-50, 90-10, whatever that player wants to propose. The second player either accepts the split, both players are paid, and the game is over, or rejects the split, neither player is paid, and the game is over. Now, the fundamental basis of neoclassical economics would tell you it's